Hello everyone. In this video I will discuss one of the films called Jules, and never forget that I always pray for you and your family to be happy and healthy always. Milton Robinson, a 79-year-old widower, lives alone in his home in a small town in the province of Pennsylvania. Milton's wife passed away long ago, and his two children are grown up and have their own families. Only Dennis regularly visits to check on Milton's condition or help with some of his needs. Meanwhile, his eldest son, Tim, lives in a distant city and has long lost contact. Dennis, who now works at an animal clinic, often finds his father placing objects in inappropriate places. This makes Dennis start to worry and suggest that his father go see a neurologist for an examination. However, Milton always rejects the request, claiming that he is fine. Almost every morning, Milton goes to the local council office with some other seniors to provide advice or input to the council members. Milton always suggests changing the town's slogan and adding zebra crossings in certain areas. And although he presents these suggestions at every meeting, it seems that the council members do not take his input seriously. One summer morning, after presenting his proposal as usual, Milton returns home and starts his daily activities, from watering his favorite plants to feeding wild birds to cleaning his belongings. But one night, while sleeping, Milton is suddenly awakened by a noise coming from the back of the house. Upon inspection, he finds a UFO has landed and damaged his favorite plants. He immediately contacts the police to report the incident, but his report is deemed ridiculous, so the receptionist ignores Milton's report and hangs up. Milton then tries to contact Dennis, but unfortunately he receives no answer, as Dennis is probably still asleep. On the second night, after returning from the meeting at the district office, Milton, who was sleeping again, heard loud noises from the backyard. Upon investigation, Milton was startled by the sight of an alien figure sprawled in front of the door. Feeling frightened, he once again contacted Dennis, but receiving no answer, Milton left a voicemail message reporting the UFO that had fallen in the backyard. The next day, Milton revisited the district council office to once again provide the same suggestions as before. However, at the end of his presentation this time, he added a report about the UFO that had landed in his backyard, which the council members dismissed as a joke.
Also, the UFO has crashed in my backyard and has taken out my azaleas and has destroyed my bird bath.
This incident also caused concern for Milton's two neighbors, Joyce and Sandy. Joyce was angry because Milton's joke would make the council members not take them seriously, so the suggestions they had been making would be ignored. Meanwhile, Sandy, concerned about Milton's health, offered him a ride home. Upon arriving home, Milton, seeing the alien figure looking very weak, immediately gave it a blanket and brought it a glass of water. The next day, Milton found the alien huddled in the corner of the yard, shivering from the cold. This made Milton even more sympathetic, so he offered for the alien to come inside the house to avoid being cold. Milton didn't know what kind of food the alien liked, so he presented several types of food and let the alien choose for itself. After a while, Milton realized that the alien only wanted to eat apples, so he went to the grocery store to buy more apples. The cashier was quite surprised, as Milton didn't usually buy such a large quantity of apples. However, in his innocence, Milton revealed that he would give these apples to the alien who had fallen in his backyard. Next, after the alien recovered and could walk again, Milton started giving a tour and introduced several rooms in his house. From the TV room where Milton usually watched his favorite shows to the bedroom that could be used by the alien to rest, he also introduced his late ex-wife and their two children in the framed photos. Meanwhile, Dennis, who was shopping at the grocery store, received a report from the previous cashier about Milton's odd behavior of buying many apples to give to the alien. Feeling concerned, Dennis took the time to go to Milton's house to check on his father. This time, she insisted that Milton schedule an appointment so that they both could see a neurologist. After that, Dennis went to work while Milton received a call from Sandy, who wanted to borrow his printer to print some brochures. Initially nervous about the request, Milton eventually agreed to let Sandy come over, so this time Sandy also became aware of the presence of the alien in Milton's house. This is where Sandy finally realized that Milton's story about the UFO falling in the backyard was indeed a true event. And although Sandy initially appeared quite frightened, she gradually became excited because the appearance of the alien was something extraordinary. Sandy also suggested that Milton keep this a secret from anyone to avoid any negative consequences, as depicted in typical alien movies. They then agreed to refer to the alien by the nickname Jules. Meanwhile, at the National Security Headquarters, the appearance of Jules's UFO had indeed been detected, but the agents couldn't pinpoint the exact location of where the UFO had landed. So they began spreading false news, asking everyone to report immediately if they found any strange object fragments, referred to as satellite debris. Additionally, they tapped various phone calls to find anyone discussing the UFO crash. The next day, Milton, waking up on the couch, suddenly found a picture of a cat's face on the table, realizing that Jules had made it. He then approached the alien, who was seen repairing his spacecraft. Milton thanked Jules for making him such a beautiful picture. Sometime later, Milton went with Dennis to the neurologist for an examination, while Jules was accompanied by Sandy, who began talking about her family while showing some photos of her children and grandchildren. Although Jules remained silent and observant, the conversation made Sandy very happy, because she hadn't had such a lengthy chat in a long time. On the other hand, Milton's failure to pass several tests led the doctor to suggest placing him in a nursing home so he wouldn't feel lonely and could still interact with others. This suggestion was vehemently rejected by Milton, who also immediately became angry with Dennis, whom he felt had trapped him. Upon returning home, Milton quickly told Jules about how Dennis wanted to put him in a nursing home and how Tim never contacted him anymore. Milton understood this because he felt he wasn't very good at being a father, and as usual Jules remained silent, observing all of Milton's words. The next day Sandy returned to spend time together and help dress Jules. On the other hand, Joyce, at home with her cat, saw a news program on television reporting about a satellite part that had fallen in the vicinity of Pennsylvania. This news reminded Joyce of Milton's report about the UFO that had crashed in his backyard. She immediately went to Milton's house and peeked through the window, only to find the alien sitting at the dining table. Joyce promptly knocked on Milton's door, revealing that she knew about the alien's presence, leaving Milton and Sandy with no choice but to invite Joyce in to meet Jules in person. The three of them engaged in a serious discussion about the potential threats and dangers Jules might pose, but Milton quickly asserted that Jules was a very kind alien, even mentioning how he had made many cat drawings for him, which were stuck on the refrigerator door. Since that day, Joyce has begun to form closer friendships with Sandy and Milton. She often brought gifts for Jules, including food and clothing. Meanwhile, Sandy, who was at home, suddenly received a phone call from a man discussing the mentor program posters that Sandy had distributed at the town hall. Sandy happily invited the man to come to her house. However, it turned out that the young man had ulterior motives. He secretly entered Sandy's room and stole her jewelry. Sandy, upon discovering this, immediately tried to contact the police. Unfortunately, the man quickly stopped Sandy and attempted to kill her. On the other hand, Jules, who was in the living room with Milton and Joyce, could sense what was happening to Sandy. Shortly after, the police arrived at Sandy's house, where Sandy testified that the man who wanted to kill her suddenly had his head mysteriously explode. This was an extremely unusual event, and Sandy quickly realized that it might have been caused by Jules. She immediately went to Milton's house and embraced Jules, expressing her gratitude for saving her life. And although Milton, Joyce and Sandy eventually realized that Jules possessed very dangerous powers, as long as he was on their side, they all believed that everything would be okay. On the other hand, the local police chief, noticing the oddity of Sandy's case, ordered his subordinates to always follow Sandy wherever she went. Meanwhile, Sandy, Joyce and Milton, who were chatting in the dining room, suddenly caught a foul smell, which turned out to be from the carcass of a cat that had died after being run over by a car. Jules brought the carcass and also handed over a drawing containing 6 cat heads and his UFO. This instantly made Joyce realize that Jules actually needed several cat carcasses to repair his spacecraft. After observing the diminishing drawings on each sheet in the refrigerator, the three friends realized that Jules still needed 6 more cat carcasses to get his spacecraft operational again. Initially, Milton contacted Dennis to try to obtain cat carcasses that might have died at her clinic. But of course, this was a rather strange request that prompted Dennis to continuously press Milton to reveal what was happening. Refusing to divulge the secret, Milton and Sandy then went out to search for cat carcasses on the streets. Unbeknownst to them, their activities were being closely monitored by 2 policemen following them.
The fuck?
Unfortunately, that day, they only found 2 cat carcasses, so now it was Joyce's turn to go out and search for the rest. On the other hand, the National Security Agency accidentally intercepted a phone call between Dennis and Tim, who were discussing Milton's recent strange behavior after revealing the UFO that had crashed in the backyard. This information was immediately investigated by the security agency, which then sent 2 agents to Milton's house. Meanwhile, Joyce returned and managed to find 3 cat carcasses, so now they only needed 1 more to give to Jules. At the same time, the 2 NSA agents arrived at Milton's house and rang the doorbell several times. But Milton refused to open the door and remained silent, pretending that he was not at home. Because the situation had become extremely dangerous, Milton suggested that Joyce sacrifice her own cat, since this was the only option they had, and Joyce's own cat had disabilities with vision, hearing, or walking. Joyce was understandably angry because she had always considered her cat as part of her family. However, after thinking about it for a while and considering various factors, Joyce eventually agreed and brought her cat to Milton's house. With a heavy heart, she covered the cat's head with a container, thinking that Jules would make it explode. However, Jules killed the cat very gently, which made Joyce even more willing to sacrifice her cat. After all the cat carcasses were collected, Jules then covered them with a metallic cloth, and surprisingly, all the cat carcasses turned into red-colored stones. Jules then placed the stone on a platform, instantly activating his spaceship. The alien then made a gesture, indicating to Milton that Jules was inviting them to enter the spaceship and go to his home planet. Joyce and Sandy declined the offer because they didn't want to leave their children. Instead, they gave Jules some mementos, such as a snow globe of the city and human clothes. Meanwhile, Milton happily agreed to go with Jules because he realized that his condition was gradually worsening and that it would only make things more difficult for Dennis to take care of him. However, just before he took a step, Milton received a call from Dennis, who this time didn't want to discuss the ongoing issue. Dennis simply wanted to spend time with Milton, going out for lunch and taking him to get a haircut. This offer made Milton realize that Dennis still cared about him. Just after the call ended, 2 NSA agents suddenly returned to the house and tried to break down the door. Realizing this, Milton quickly directed Joyce, Sandy, and Jules to board the spaceship and leave. Jules's spacecraft then landed on a beachfront, initially mistaken by the 3 elderly individuals as being on another planet. However, upon seeing food waste there, they realized they were still on Earth. Here, Milton finally decided not to accompany Jules and expressed gratitude for the offer. Although Milton was very eager to see Jules's home planet, he realized that Earth was his true home, where he had spent the remainder of his life. Milton then held Jules's hand, expressing that he would be okay, even though what might happen in the future might not be very pleasant.
I would have enjoyed very much journeying with you through the heaven, but I've lived on this planet all my life. I'll be okay.
The film ended with the 3 elderly individuals gathering at Milton's house to reminisce about some memories they shared with Jules. And one night, when Milton was alone, a bright light suddenly descended into the backyard, making Milton realize that Jules was coming to visit him, thus concluding the story of Milton and Jules, and the film concluded. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.